Learn a Black Gemara. We're starting today Masechta Beya. Even though it's written Beitza, you're supposed to pronounce it Beya. As there's brought down in Mogen Avraham and Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuftan Vav, Beitza is a word that has allusions to other meanings that are not so nice, not so eloquent. So therefore you're supposed to pronounce it Beya, even though there's a tzaddik there. And lately I hear a lot of people pronouncing it Beitza. Obviously they're not aware of that Mogen Avraham. This Masechta is also called Masechta Yom Tov because this Masechta Beya covers all the dinim of Yom Tov. All Yom Tovim universally share these same dinim. And the Torah says when it comes to Yom Tov that that which you require to enable you to eat on Yom Tov, we allow you to do those malachas on Yom Tov. So certain malachas are permitted on Yom Tov, which are necessary. You couldn't do them prior. And there's a machlekes rishonim how far back, what early stages can we talk about? Can we talk about even about grinding or talk about once you have the flour, you're allowed to bake it. So let's talk about later. There's a machlekes rishonim on that. And also when it comes to the laws of muktzah, there's a logic that perhaps Yom Tov is more severe than Shabbos because people take Yom Tov a bit more lightly, thinking that you can do all these malachas. Why can't you do also muktzah? Carrying is the only malacha that, even though you could have done it before Yom Tov, we allow you to do it on Yom Tov because we want you to be besimcha. The theme of Yom Tov is besimcha, and anything which enables you to have more simcha, we are relaxed with. So, about the Mishnah is going to count 3 arguments where Beis Shammai is more lenient than Beis Hill, which is very rare. And all 3 pertain to the laws of Yom Tov. So the first one is a generic law. Beya shenol de Yom Tov, an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. We'll see in the Gemara later. We'll see in the Gemara will be a discussion that 2 kinds of hens. A hen that was prepared in order to eat, a live hen that you set aside when you're planning to eat. So they're obviously not muktzah, a lot of shechter on Yom Tov. And then if so, we'll have a discussion why in the world should the egg be forbidden. If you're allowed to eat the chicken, surely you should eat the egg. If you were going to shech the chicken, you would have eaten the egg with it. So why, if the egg was laid, should be any different, as we'll discuss in the Gemara? Or we could be talking about a hen that was set aside to lay eggs. In other words, he had no intention of being on Yom Tov, so it is muktzah. And the egg, therefore, as a result of that, is also muktzah. So then the discussion will be, so why would there be a machlekes if it's muktzah or not? Because it's muktzah. So we'll see. Beis Yom Tov, an egg that was laid on Yom Tov, Beis Shammai says, Te'ach. Beis Shammai says, you may eat it. Ubeis Hill, you cannot eat it. Teis already asks. And others showing, why do we use the word eat and not eat? Just say mutter or asa. Because if we would have said the word mutter, we would have said mutter means you're allowed to move it around. It's not muktzah, but you cannot eat it. Therefore, the Mishnah spelled out you could eat it. Beis Shammai says, so that's argument number 1. But Beis Shammai is more lenient. He says you can eat the egg that was laid on Yom Tov. Argument number 2, which has nothing, is not a general Yom Tov question, but a specific one on Pesach. Beis Shammai says we'll see in the Gemara later. We're talking about whether we're talking about eating or bayirah. But when it comes to bayirah, sa'ir, because it has a pasuk called and you shouldn't see any chametz, shouldn't find any chametz in your house. So he says there are 2 different rules, one for sa'ir and one for chametz, and that is as follows. Beis Shammai says sa'ir, when it comes to sa'ir, the sourdough, the yeast, because that is not just chametz, but that is leaven, it causes other things to become chametz as well. Then we are more stringent because I is the size of an olive is already forbidden. The chametz, but when it comes to chametz, which doesn't have the power to make other things leaven, just in itself, then bakar sebes. Then it's a date, which is larger than the olive, but smaller than an egg. So he's lenient. And Beis Hill says zeba kazayis. No difference. So chametz always a kazayis. That's argument number 2, where Beis Hill is more machmir than Beis Shammai. Argument number 3. We know when we shecht a bird or you shecht a chaya like a deer, venison, there's a special mitzvah called kisi hadam. You have to cover the blood with dust. We don't have this mitzvah when you shecht an animal. So what happens on Yom Tov? Can you shecht an animal when you don't have the dust available? You have to sort of dig it up. So hasheichet chaya v'oif bi Yom Tov. You shecht the chaya oif on Yom Tov itself. Beis Shammai says yachper badekem. You dig with your shovel, you chas, and you cover it. And the Gemara will talk about later. The shovel is already there, and there's already loose dirt over there. So you just pick up the shovel and the dirt comes out. And yet Beis Hillel says also, Beis Hillel disagrees. Even then, you cannot check unless you already set aside the dust right before Yom Tov that you're going to use this for Kisei Hadam. Otherwise, it's muktzah. But a Maidim, they all agree. But the Evid, if you did shech, now you have a mitzvah. The mitzvah say of Kisei Hadam will override that concern. That as long as you already have soft sand over there and the shovel is there, so you can then take the shovel and move the sand out of the shil with Maidim V'Shamai in a case where it was already done. Then the Mishnah concludes, the ashes of an oven are prepared. Now, what exactly this line means, what does the ashes of an oven have to do with what we're talking about? The Gemara will say it's a new case over there. And we're going to talk about if the ashes were created on Yom Tov or before Yom Tov, if you can use those ashes as dust. We'll see later in the Gemara. Okay, Gemara. So we're trying to understand first, what's the case of the Tanago? So the Gemara, what are we talking about? Remember I told you two kinds of hens. A hen which was meant to be eaten, then it's namuktzah. Then we have to wonder about the egg. What's the problem? Or it's a hen that was set aside for laying eggs, which means it is muktzah. And again, the egg definitely is muktzah. What's the discussion? So the Gemara will say, and we're going to answer different ways. Have to learn either one. The Ma'aske, what are we talking about? The hen was meant to be eaten. Then what's the hill's problem? Why does he say you cannot eat a laid egg? Uchla, the ifrasud, it's food is part of the hen. You could have eaten the hen. Why can't you eat the egg? Ella must be talking about is a hen set aside to lay eggs. In other words, it is muktzit for eating. You only set aside to lay eggs. No, so why Bishami hold that you could eat the egg? It's muktzit. Muktzit says more. That's a problem. Well, my kushya, what's the problem? We know there's an argument as to whether there's muktzit or not. Maybe Bishami holds like Reb Shimon that there's no muktzit. So my kushya deal with Bishami, less little muktzah. Maybe Bishami doesn't even hold the laws of muktzah. So what's your kasha? He holds that a tanago is set aside for laying egg. Not only the egg is permitted, maybe even the tanago is permitted because they don't hold the muktzah. Because no, right now we thought that even those who don't agree with muktzah, there are different degrees of muktzah. And the kind of muktzah that we're talking about over here is called noilid. Noilid, even Rav Shimon doesn't agree with, let's say, the general principle of muktzah Shabbos, agrees there are certain laws of muktzah, like muktzah machem chasar and kiss, where there's a big law, so you're not going to play around with it, you're not going to tamper with it, then Rav Shimon's noilid that's completely removed from your mind is muktzah. We would have thought that noilid it seems more like breaking the spirit of Shabbos than any other kind of muktzah. What's noilid? Noilid is something that wasn't here before, suddenly it appeared in Shabbos. Isn't that what Shabbos is all about? The world was created, and we now cease creating the world. So we would have thought that noilid is a type of muktzah that even those who don't agree with muktzah, the principle of muktzah, will agree that noilid is different. And that's why we're asking. Even Rabbi Shammai, if this bird is set aside not for eating but for laying eggs, how can you eat the egg that came from it? That laid egg is new, it's noilid. We think more explains the question. I feel I'm just trying to muktzah, even those who say muktzah permitted, but noilid should be forbidden. So my tamayah the Beishamai, why in the world does Beishamai say that it's all right that you're permitted to eat the egg? Amar Rav Nachman. So we're going to have a number of answers in the Gemara. First, the Gemara is going to go down the direction of muktzah. Now, if the direction of muktzah, then how come Beishamai is lenient over here? But we're going to say Beishamai holds no muktzah, no noilid. Your assumption is wrong. Really, we're talking about betanagelis or we're talking about a hen that's there to lay eggs, and therefore it is muktzah. Those who agree with the principle of muktzah agree with the principle of noilid. But the less than muktzah, less than noilid. But those who don't agree with the principle of muktzah don't agree with the principle of noilid. And therefore, Beishamai holds like Reb Shimon that there's no muktzah, there's no noilid, and that's why he permits you to eat that laid egg on Yom Tov. And Beis Hillel, Rabbi Yehuda, that there is muktzah and therefore there's noilid. Says the Gemara, Rab Nachman Hachi. Did Rab Nachman really say that? Why not? What's the problem? So the Gemara explains. Did Rab Nachman really say that Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that muktzah is forbidden and therefore noilid is forbidden? That's why the egg is forbidden. But now I'll show you somewhere else that Rab Nachman learns that Hillel is actually lenient when it comes to muktzah. That Hillel is the one who said that there's no muktzah on Shabbos, and yet here you're telling me that the argument of Hillel and Shammai revolves around the laws of muktzah, and the Hillel is stricter. He believes in muktzah, believes in noilid, and Shammai is lenient, no muktzah, no noilid. And in fact, Rab Nachman, the very same Nachman, elsewhere said that Hillel doesn't believe in the laws of muktzah and Shabbos. Where is that? Because now we learn Beishamai. We had in the Mishnah Beishamai says Magbiin Mala Shulchan. Then on Shabbos, after you finish eating, let's say your chicken or your meat, the bones which you no longer plan to eat, so it's muktzah. He holds you're allowed to lift it from the table, the bones, uklipin and the shells. In other words, he doesn't believe in the laws of muktzah. Basil says misalik. It's a tabla kula. You cannot pick up the individual pieces because they're muktzah, but you lift the entire board, the entire table, uminadi, you shake it off, and that's how you get rid of the bones. In other words, Basil believes in the laws of muktzah. That's why you have to move the table. But came along Rav Nachman. I heard from my teachers all the way around that you have to swap the names around. It's Beishamai who believes in muktzah, Basil doesn't. Ela Beishamai Kerab Yehuda, Basil Shimon. Beishamai is more holy Yehuda. There is muktzah, and Basil there is no muktzah. So the same that Nachman said there's no muktzah, and Hillel explains our Mishnah that Hillel says the egg that was laid is forbidden because of muktzah, but Hillel doesn't believe in muktzah. You yourself said that. So Rav Nachman is going to say there's a difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. That discussion there was Shabbos. Hillel doesn't believe in the laws of muktzah, and Shammai does. But in Yom Tov, it's the other way around. In Yom Tov, Hillel does believe in the laws of muktzah. Why? First of all, how do I know? Says the Gemara, Nachman, Gabi Shabbos, by Shabbos, the Sosam, Tanik, Rab Shimon, we have a Stam Mishnah like Rab Shimon. Whenever Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wanted to declare that the halacha is like this Mishnah, he would leave it anonymous to say, I agree with it. It doesn't belong to any individual author. This is universal or consensus. So in the laws of Shabbos, we have a Stam Mishnah that follows Rab Shimon. There's no muktzah. Therefore, the halacha by Shabbos, there's no muktzah. That's Hillel. And in Yom Tov, we have a Stam Mishnah where there is muktzah, so therefore the halacha is that there is muktzah. That's Hillel holds muktzah. There's no question between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Where do we see by Shabbos that Hillel, the Stam Mishnah says there's no muktzah? Now we learned. You're allowed to cut up gourd before an animal on Shabbos, and an animal that died, that died on Shabbos, even though it died on Shabbos. In other words, yesterday it was alive, so it was muktzah. You had no intention of doing anything with it on Shabbos, and this it was not ready to be eaten by dogs. Nevertheless, it's permitted. Why? Because there's no muktzah in Shabbos. So therefore, Hillel would hold you're allowed to remove, individually pick up each bone and the shells and throw it away, toss it away, because there's no laws of muktzah and Shabbos. That's why Rav Nachman swaps the names around when it comes to laws of bones. However, so Shabbos, the halacha is there's no muktzah. But when it comes to Yom Tov, when it comes to Yom Tov, over there we have a Stam Mishnah that's like Rabbi Yehuda. What do we see by Yom Tov? Because we have a Tanakh like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, by Yom Tov, Stam Mishnah said there is muktzah. What's the story there? It says, if you need firewood on Yom Tov, do not chop wood min hakodesh. You had beams piled up used for construction, so therefore it was muktzah. You had no intention of using it as firewood. You cannot on Yom Tov go ahead and use it as firewood and chop them up. Why? Because they are muktzah. Now suddenly Yom Tov, there's a Stam Mishnah that says we do follow the principle of muktzah. And likewise, loy min hakodesh and nishbri Yom Tov. We have a beam that was intact, and then suddenly it broke on Yom Tov, so now it's ready to be firewood. But since yesterday it wasn't ready to be firewood, it's muktzah. So what do we see? When it comes to Yom Tov, we do follow the principles of muktzah. So therefore, on Yom Tov the halacha is there is muktzah, and on Shabbos the halacha is there is no muktzah. And that's why there's no conflict between Rabbi Nachman's explanation on Mishnah here Yom Tov to Rabbi Nachman's explanation over there by bones on Shabbos. Now the Gemara wants to know what's the logic. It says the Gemara. So is that Moikele Beisil Rabbi Yehuda Mechti? So Gemara says, I don't understand. Man says, who's the one who decided these Stam Mishnah anonymous missions? It's Rebbe. So Ma'ishna b'Shabbos, why is it when it comes to Masechta, when it comes to the laws of Shabbos, the Sassan like Rab Shimon there, he decides to align himself with Rab Shimon that there's no muktzah. Ma'ishna b'Yom Tov, why is when it comes to Yom Tov the Sassan like Rabbi Yehuda? When it comes to Yom Tov, he said, I follow Yehuda, there is muktzah. What's the logic of that? Amri Gemara explained there is a logic to it. Shabbos, the Chamida, Shabbos, which is so stringent, Shabbos, which is so stringent, people take Shabbos much more seriously, and people won't treat it lightly. So we don't have to be that strict when it comes to the laws of muktzah. Sasan Rab Shimon, the make we follow Rab Shimon, that is lenient. Or the Yom Tov the kill, Yom Tov that people treat lightly because so many malachas are permitted in Yom Tov which are forbidden on Shabbos. So people start thinking that the entire Yom Tov is something much more lenient than Shabbos. They don't take it seriously. But asi lizozul, people take advantage and do things on Yom Tov which you shouldn't. So therefore we decide on the other end, you know what? We're going to be machmer when it comes to the laws of muktzah. So people should take Shabbos seriously. So that's how Nachman understands our Mishnah. That our Mishnah is talking about. The principle of muktzah, and I'm talking about a hen which was set aside to lay eggs. Says the Gemara, so what do you tell me? We're talking about the Tana Goyla. So the Gemara's question obviously is going to be, Why focus on the egg? What about the hen itself? You're telling me the principle is the muktzah, there's no muktzah. So the hen that was set aside for laying eggs, according to Beitza Daf, that is a muktzah, right? You had no intention of eating it. According to Shammai, who cares? There's no laws of muktzah in Yom Tov. So why argue about the egg? Argue about the hen itself. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. But Maya came to how do you understand the Mishnah? Betana goylis or emedes legadol beim. We're talking about Tana goylis, which is sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself as you go along. Sorry.
Oh, okay. We're talking about a hen, a hen that's set aside to lay eggs. And the concern is muktzah. So, why argue and discuss an egg? Discuss the hen. Says the Gemara, an interesting concept. You know why we're discussing the what do you call it? You know why we're discussing the egg? We want to show you how far Beis Shammai is lenient. Not only muktzah, Beis Shammai says I'm not concerned with. Even noilid, which you said in the beginning, your initial premise was that noilid is stricter than any other muktzah because it's created on Shabbos. This is similar to creation, and we should abstain from it. So you want to tell you that Beis Shammai holds that there's no noilid on Yom Tov. Not only is no muktzah, no noilid, and that's why we argue about an egg. It's much severe. It's a severe case of muktzah. Says the Gemara. So you want to highlight how lenient Beis Shammai is. Let's talk about the hen and highlight how strict Beis Hillel is, which is just as a wonder, just a great wonder as Beis Shammai being lenient, Beis Hillel being strict. And not only the egg is forbidden, which is noilik, even the hen itself, which is merely muktzah, is forbidden on Yom Tov. Shabbos is permitted, permitted, but Yom Tov is forbidden. Isn't that a bigger chiddush? The lifloi betana goyles. Why don't we argue about the hand? And tell us how far Beis Hillel goes. To the muktzah asi, even just ordinary muktzah. You're going to answer me, no. We have a choice to highlight either someone who's very strict or either highlight someone very lenient. We'd rather focus on the lenient. And Rashi explains very nicely why. A real Rav, if a real Rav is mekel, says Rashi, is lenient, and he has Yiras Shamayim, he must make sure that he has a very strong basis, a very sound basis to his halacha. So you know that he came from a point of view of learning. But to be machmir, you can be the biggest Amoritz. What's the big deal to be machmir? So easy to say this is treif and that's it. So it doesn't prove you're a Talmud Chacham at all. But to be mekel, if you're Yiras Shamayim, if you're not Yiras Shamayim, it's no kunz either. But if you're Yiras Shamayim and you want to be mekel, then you have to know what you're talking about. So koicha dat teira adiv. We'd rather hear the one who's matzah because obviously he's basing it on sound and solid ground, rather than what's the big deal if somebody's machmir. So everyone is machmir. You don't have to be a Talmud Chacham to say this is forbidden. Says the Gemara, the reason why we're highlighting an egg, because we want to demonstrate how far Beis Shammai is lenient. What's the big deal? Argue on both. Even though usually we only bring down one argument and we say we're coming koichelateda, but over here it's only one extra word. Just say Tana goyles ubeyasa, and that's it. And we would cover both grounds. Usually when you want to cover both, you have to add a whole bunch of words. Here, just one word. So you want to ask, you say, Tana goyles or emed is the guy obeying, ahead, that's what we're talking about. He, ubeyasa, it's one extra word, he. And the egg, Beis Shammai em te'achol is no muktzah, Beis Hillel em lo te'achol. So as a result of that, the Gemara is not satisfied. So we're going to steer away from learning and talking about muktzah, and we're going to talk about an ordinary hen that was set aside for eating, and you're permitted to eat the hen, and that's why there's no discussion about the hen. Shammai and Hillel both hold you can eat the hen. The discussion is about the egg. And why should there be a problem with the egg? Why should there be a problem with the egg? Says the Gemara, we have a concept we're going to learn now called hachana derabba. That Torah says clearly you have to bake and cook before Yom Tov, before Shabbos, cook on Shabbos. But then the Torah says also that you should prepare that which you're going to use on Shabbos. This is called hachana. You have to prepare. Shabbos and Yom Tov are both very chashuv, so it demands whatever you're going to make for them, it has to be chashuv as well. So we learn now that only a weekday can prepare for Shabbos and Yom Tov, but Shabbos cannot prepare for Yom Tov, and Yom Tov cannot prepare for Shabbos. Because it has to be b'yom, only in a weekday can you prepare, because it's chashuv. But, for example, on an ordinary Sunday, even though the egg was laid on Shabbos, so l'chari you're preparing for Shabbos and Sunday, it's not a problem, because Sunday is not a chashuv day. The meals don't have to be prepared, so we don't view that which you did on Shabbos as if you're preparing it for Sunday meal. Nobody prepares for the next day meals. It's only Shabbos and Yom Tov which are so chashuv that whatever you do prior is called a preparation. And the Torah says that preparation should be done on a weekday. Says the Gemara, when you gather the month. Says the Gemara, Here. So you Lo that was meant to be eaten. So it's meant to be eaten. So what's the problem? The problem we were talking about a case where Sunday was Yom Tov and Shabbos was the day before. And so therefore the egg is laid on Sunday. It was finished, completed on Shabbos. That means that Shabbos prepared for Sunday, even though you didn't do it, it happened naturally, the Abishah did it. It's still a preparation. And we don't, and the Torah says only the weekday should prepare for Yom Tov and Shabbos, but not Shabbos should prepare. Any egg that was laid on Sunday, was completed yesterday on Shabbos. The Rabbi said, on the sixth day in the weekday, you should prepare what you need for Shabbos with the double mun. And Shama and what do you call it? And as Rashi explains, it can't be talking about baking and cooking because that is a separate passage. You should cook everything and bake everything before Shabbos. Or Taisa said that's not really called preparing because all it is you're changing the food. Here it's talking about something like brand new, something wasn't there before and you brought it in. Choil mechin l'Shabbos. We live in the pasuk a 6 day, a weekday can prepare for Shabbos. Choil mechin l'Yom Tov, a weekday can prepare for Yom Tov. But the ain't Yom Tov mechin l'Shabbos, ain't Shabbos mechin l'Yom Tov. Yom Tov cannot prepare for Shabbos, and Shabbos cannot prepare for Yom Tov. So we're talking. Our Mishnah talking about a case where Yom Tov was on a Sunday. Or and because Yom Tov was on a Sunday, that means the egg was complete on Shabbos, and Shabbos cannot prepare for a Sunday. Says the Gemara, Abai, of course, jumps on him straight away and says, fine. What about on a Tuesday Yom Tov, or a Wednesday Yom Tov? If an egg was laid on a Tuesday or a Wednesday on Yom Tov, you should be able to eat it because it was prepared on a weekday before. What's the problem? Yet our Mishnah makes a general statement that, without any exceptions, that an egg laid on Yom Tov is always forbidden. Yom Tov, if Yom Tov falls out during the week, it should be permitted. And says Rabba, Gzeida Mishum Yom Tov Achar Shabbos. The reason why if Yom Tov falls out on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, if the egg was laid then, you cannot eat the egg because next time if Yom Tov falls out on a Sunday, you'll think also you can eat the egg, but they can't because the egg laid on Sunday was actually completed on Shabbos. That means Shabbos is preparing for Sunday. Says the Gemara, Shabbos the Alma Tishrei. So okay, but what about Shabbos? An egg laid on Shabbos, you should be able to eat because it was completed on Friday. Says the Gemara again. If Yom Tov was on a Friday, then Yom Tov was when the egg was completed. So Yom Tov prepare for Shabbos. That's forbidden, and therefore you're not allowed to any day of the week Shabbos, regardless of what was Friday. You're not allowed to eat an egg laid on Shabbos, and nor can you eat an egg laid on Yom Tov because of a Gzeira. Next time, if Yom Tov was the day after Shabbos, so Shabbos the day after Yom Tov. Says the Gemara. Abai says the same. We had to raise this discussion. Do we make a Gzeira to a Gzeira or not? Even though we had an argument between Abai and Rav, and Abai says you do make Gzeira, but then obviously change his mind. So Abai says, are we going to make a Gzeira on top of a Gzeira, compound a Gzeira? So the Rabbanan are coming here to protect the Torah. The also Mishmeres says to Mr. Shmarti, I want you to protect my Torah, but I don't want you to protect yourself. That's protecting my Torah. That's 2 steps away. So says the Gemara, do we make such a second degree? We learn. It says clearly, we'll come back to this in a minute. It said we learned, Hasheichet is a Tanagayla, some of the shech to the hen. First, we ask a question before we get to the compounding Zeta. We ask a question. That's clearly if you found whole eggs in the chicken when the hen, when you shechted it on Yom Tov, you're permitted to eat those eggs. You can eat it. But why the mitzvah, if you're right, so the Gemara said, let it be goyzer. How can you go ahead and eat those eggs? What happened? It would have been laid today. If this egg, if you waited an hour or two, it would have come out of the hen, and then it will be usher to eat it. So just because you shechted it the early morning and therefore you found the eggs whole, why are you allowed to eat it? Why aren't we worried that you're going to? You'll think if you're allowed to eat a whole egg inside the chicken, why can't you eat a whole egg when it falls out of the chicken? Why do you? If you're entering Gzeda, this is Gzeda that makes a lot of sense. Says Gemara, you're right. You're right. But Beim Gemuras B'mei Iman. When you shecht a hen to find a complete egg, milsa de is highly rare. Well, milsa de which is uncommon, we don't make zaydas unless it's common. Rabbi Yisrael, so that's one answer. The answer basically is that it's not muktzah; it's to do with hachana de rabba, and that is that it's a hen. The hen is all right because it's not muktzah; you're meant to eat it, but the egg, it was prepared yesterday, and if yesterday would have been Shabbos, it's Shabbos preparing for Yom Tov. Rabbi Yisrael along the same lines agreed that the hen is no problem because you can eat it. But what's the problem with the egg? Why we were geyser by the egg is for because it's something similar On Shabbos would have forbidden as well. What do you mean? Rabbi Yosef says, it's very similar to the case if an apple falls off a tree on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it. Why? We're scared, you never go pick it. So same thing over here. If the egg was laid on Shabbos, it's no different. It looks like a fruit that fell off the tree on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, and therefore you cannot eat it. Says, I don't understand. Says, Abaye says to Rabbi Yosef. So Abaye, equally deals with both Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Pay this time. What's the reason why you cannot eat a fruit that fell off a tree? Next time you'll climb a tree and you'll pick the fruit. So we have a valid reason why to graze it. So the whole thing is he go for Gzeda. So no, if an apple falls off a tree, we're worried the next time you climb the tree. So now you're going a step further and saying if an egg was laid on Shabbos because it looks like a fruit that fell, next time you can eat the fruit that fell on the ground. And then we're worried if you do that, you're going to pick a tree. That's too many steps. That's Gzeda l'Gzeda. Says the Gemara, he grew for Gzeda. The whole idea is Gzeda, what? A fruit falling on the tree. Then next time you're climbing, pick it. But not naked when we're going to say that you're not allowed to eat because the egg. What do we worry about the egg? You're going to go pick the egg out of the chicken? No, we're just saying that if you're going to, way Abaye understood, if we're going to allow you to have the egg that was laid on Yom Tov, next time you'll eat the fruit that fell down on Yom Tov, and if you do that, next time you climb the tree. Isn't that 2 steps removed? No, when they actually made that decree and they said that fruits that fall of a tree is forbidden, and the reason because you might climb the tree. So they said, you know what? No, they said anything at the same time when they banned the fallen fruits. They said no, anything which is similar to that, anything which that came out, appeared on Yom Tov or on Shabbos, is no that looks like a fallen fruit because the fruit wasn't edible, it was hanging on the tree. Only when it fell down to the ground, it is forbidden as well. So not like it was 2 steps. Not first they came along and they banned fallen fruits, and then they said, okay, let's see now what we ban after that. It was all done at the same time. It's all the same thing. And that's why it's forbidden. And just one more answer quickly. Again, all the same theme. Rabbi Yitzchak said the same thing. The hand was meant to be eaten, was set aside to be eaten, so there's no muktzah. The problem is the egg. Rabbi says because hachana the Rabbi, because you prepared from Shabbos to Yom Tov. The Rabbi Yosef said because it's like fruits that fall, and therefore it's part of that gezerah. And Rabbi Yitzchak said, I agree with Rabbi Yosef in a way, but a different gezerah. Gezerah mishum mashkin shezov. You're not allowed to squeeze grapes or olives on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, because it's called schita. And then if it oozes out on its own, it's forbidden because we're worried if we're going to allow you to drink the juice that fell out of the grapes, next time you can actually squeeze the grapes. So same thing here. This came out it emerged from the hen, so therefore it's similar to that. Abaye asked the same question. So the way Abaye understood it is first they banned the liquid that oozes out, and then they came along and said, you know what, we're going to ban also the egg because next time you'll drink the grape juice that came out, and then next time you'll squeeze. So Abaye mashkin shows over time. What's the reason? Zayda when I squeeze, he goof Zayda, the whole thing of Zayda, the nix Zayda, will make add another Zayda. So when it answers kula chadik zaydi, the same thing. When they sat down, they made a zayda about juice that was oozing. They included also an egg that was laid. It was the same idea. So basically, we have the Gemara's answer right now. Tomorrow we'll continue the Gemara. The Gemara's answer right now is because it's forbidden. Because it's not because of muktzah, not like Rav Nachman, but rather because the egg itself, either because achad the rabbis prepared yesterday, and maybe Shabbos was yesterday, so we always ban it, or because of fruits that fall of the tree, or because of ashkin that oozed. I was going to tell you about the mun, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. Okay.